Hello, my name is Dianne Saxe. I am an environmental lawyer and the deputy leader of the Green Party of Ontario, and I'm the Green Party candidate for the next provincial election in University-Rosedale. And in honor of Black History Month, I'm having the honor of a conversation with these two wonderful people who run green businesses in University-Rosedale, both of them vegetarian restaurants with delicious food. So, Peter, please introduce yourself and tell us about your restaurant.
Hello and hi, Diane. My name is Peter McKenzie. I run a vegan restaurant in Kensington Market. Uh, the reason for what we're doing here in Kensington is all about fortification of the vegan lifestyle. So basically, not just providing vegetables, but putting it together um, to make it a little bit more sustainable and the word I always try to use is to make vegetarian feel like they're not losing anything or lacking any form of nutrition. So that's where the word fortification always be popping up in what we're doing in Kensington Market. Away from that, we also try to deal with the environment, how we prepare our vegetables and how we discharge the vegetables, like mostly like juice in most of the, the vegetables after they're finished using, like for example cut up cabbage, carrots, and then try to reuse them back into our dishes, like for cakes, bacon, and also just juice. And so we actually have the recycling process where we would dry these fibers and then we'll use it for plant food or our own food. So those are some of the angles that we tackle here in Veggie D'Light. Away from me, 10 years ago, I decided to try my hand at helping my family become more healthy. So going through some of the recipes that I learned in Jamaica and bringing that expertise here in Canada, I realized that there was a void of like flavor and taste that I could use and benefit everyone with some sampling of our recipes.
Yeah, and it's delicious. So thank you, Peter. Ikeila, please introduce yourself and tell us a bit about your restaurant.
Hi, my name is Ikeila Wright. I am the owner, operator, chef, pot washer, mop pusher at One Love Vegetarian. We're at 854 Bathurst Street in Toronto. We are really blessed to be in a location that really reflects the history of the Afro-Caribbean community here in Toronto. The space where we occupy used to be Joyce's Caribbean Foods. It was one of the first Caribbean grocerettes in Toronto. And that was long before the ethnic aisle existed, or no frills, or the basics. Yeah, that ethnic aisle, it's a scary place. I don't know what's down there, but this is where my family used to shop when I was quite young. And it was a place to get staples that were not available in the supermarket because it wasn't deemed financially lucrative enough to have those things available. So besides Kensington Market, which was also a very strong hub for the Caribbean community to get their staples, this was a very main and central place. Also the strip going up and down Bathurst Street from Bloor, starting at Honest Heads, going north, where there were a lot of very small, independently owned Caribbean businesses. So we've been at this location since 2009. Which is a milestone for us. This is our 12th year here. Before this, I was doing festivals, any festival that you could think of. We were there doing our roasted corn and our One Love corn soup, which gained a lot of notoriety in the city. So it was a great transition to come into a brick and mortar and to have a business place where people could come and get anything else besides just soup and corn. It was a place to get a meal or to get catering done for your events. Yeah.
And also delicious food. So
thank you very much.
Yeah. So both of you, I'm interested. Why did you decide to run a vegetarian or a vegan restaurant? What brought you to that?
Should I?
Sure, Peter, go ahead.
Okay, well, not only just the lifestyle, but the healthy benefit that I have seen personally that it has helped in my level of life. Um, like I started out being a vegetarian, and like I come from a background where they were Seventh-day Adventists. So Seventh-day Adventist people are people who basically have a certain food restriction that they have developed over the years. And with my parents being that strict in certain way of handling food, I developed a certain knowledge of what food does, how it and how it affects. So moving along, I went to the vegan part of it because then I realized that my body wasn't adjusting to the animal zone. So like I tried going back here and there, trying to figure out why, but then my body keep telling me no. So, and then having kids, I realized that they needed to understand why I chose this life and why I'm trying to incorporate them in this life. So basically one of the main thing is health reasons.
So you did it mainly for your own health and the health of your kids, is that right?
Yes.
What about you, Ikeila?
My mother couldn't cook.
Okay. So how did
Contrary
that
to
take you to a
popular,
vegetarian?
sorry, Mom, but contrary to popular belief, not all Caribbean women can cook. So it was incumbent upon myself and my brothers to find a way out in a nice way
Yes.
to fend for ourselves. And in the journey of, discovering different recipes and different foods, as Toronto, as no other place in the world, I believe, has such diversity of food
Right.
and restaurants, marketplaces. It was my joy to speak to Italian nonas and find out how they made their lasagna and vegetarianize them. It was my pleasure to find out about, different recipes from different cultures and veganize them, and I did have 5 vegan children, which was no mean feat bringing them up vegan. So I understand Chef Peter's struggle of trying to, assimilate your children into school life, sport life, and being non-meat eating people. It can be challenging. So I had to make sure that the food didn't suck, according to my children.
So
Because
that's what makes
if
you.
there was
So Ikeila, the story you're telling to me says, why are you a really good chef of vegan food? But it doesn't tell me, why did you choose to make and cook and sell vegan food?
well, see, within the Rastafari tradition, we do no harm.
Okay.
No harm should come to the earth, to the planet, to an animal, just for us to sustain ourselves.
Right.
And it is quite feasible to live a plant-based life and be healthy. And it doesn't have to be exotified. It doesn't have to be something fancy that is out of the norm. It should be just a natural way of being, and growing up, there were no vegetarian restaurants. When my children, and when they were quite expensive. When my children were small, it was very difficult to find a place like Peter's place or like my place where you could get a plate of simple food. It didn't have to be fancy. It flavorful, yes, but fancy, no. You know what I mean? Like young children can go to a burger joint or a fish and chips or a pizza. But for my children, I had to make all those things at home. So having a place to give people a comfort food and accessibility to get the food that's healthy for them and nourishing and satisfying and flavorful, and also good for the environment, good for the farmers, and keeping all levels of production of the food in mind, whether it's the suppliers that supply my environmentally friendly cutlery, the kind of napkins we use, the type of takeout containers we use, which we do go the extra mile to do these things because, again, no harm to the planet. It shouldn't have to be that the planet is harmed so that we can eat. There shouldn't be a lot of waste left over afterwards. It's not compostable.
Well, you jumped ahead to where I wanted to go. I mean, I know there are many different reasons why people become vegetarians or vegans. I haven't eaten meat myself in more than half a century. Um,
No.
and we know now that for those who, like me, take the climate crisis seriously, that eating a plant-based diet can be one of the things that individuals can do to significantly reduce our own footprint. But I am interested in what else you do in your restaurants to keep your carbon footprint down. Ikeila, is there anything else that you wanted to tell us about?
Well, when you're in power, I didn't say if, I said when. I hope that there will be, subsidies for restaurants like myself who will go the extra mile and use the white takeout containers rather than the black ones that are non-recyclable. Mm-hmm. So you can imagine, especially now during, the environment of COVID, that most restaurants are doing takeout now. 100% of restaurants are takeout now. And the containers are not recyclable if they're black plastic.
Yes, you're right. You're right.
So I'm a small business, a very small business compared to some, and I use white containers that are recyclable. I've been using paper straws before Justin said that they were going to be outlawed in Canada. You understand? I've been using the bio-friendly cutlery. These are great expenses for a small business. It cuts into your profit greatly. Mm-hmm. And it's very difficult to pass that on to the consumer because, well, why would I eat here, when the food is so expensive and I can go somewhere else and get a cheap eat? Not everyone has that in mind. I think more and more people are becoming more conscious of their choices. We were encouraging people to bring their own containers at one point, which was wonderful. People would come and bring their own cutlery, their own napkins. It was great. But because of the pandemic, we have to, reorganize and rethink, how do we move forward in a way that's safe for the public, safe for us, and also, convenient for the planet.
Right. Well, I sure am hoping that we'll be able to get back to people bringing their own refillable containers pretty soon once everybody gets vaccinated. But
well, we would also like a subsidy or some incentive from the government to allow bigger companies to want to get on the bandwagon of being more environmentally friendly. I see it happening. Yes. Pizza Hut is doing it. I saw that Wendy's is doing it. They're coming up with more bio board for their pizza boxes, and they're using in limited locations the environmentally friendly cutlery. It's a step.
It's a step, absolutely.
But we have the ability to step bigger.
Sure. Peter, what other things are you doing to keep your carbon footprint down?
Well, I touched on it earlier, like the compost that we do. Like we compost our own vegetable waste. Like we have a juicer that we put all the scraps through, turn it into trash. Then after it's a little wet or damp, we put it on our fan, a little fan we have to keep dry it a little bit. Then we put it into our ovens and so forth, taking that time to make sure that that amount of scrap is not going back into the wasteland. And also because of that, now I'm realizing that we can drink that juice again. So basically, it's a real recycle, like for our bodies, and then that compost don't ever touch the outside, because whatever is left and dried I use for the plants, and I also just save it for other members who come in. I could explain to them what we're doing, and they're like, wow, like, could we get some of that? And then they see that I love Ikeila, your jungle behind you, because those are the type of things people, when they come in and see the green plants that we're growing, and they're like, hey, how you get your plants so healthy? And these are a platform now to explain what I'm doing. And then they start to say, hey, could I get some of that? And so I don't get too much stacked up on.
So Peter, you're growing plants in your restaurant with the food waste from the meals you've prepared.
Yes.
That's very cool.
Yes.
That is very cool indeed.
And because of the fiber content, I put that back in some of the cakes, some of the casseroles, some of the soups, just to give it a little thickener. So it's not about just nothing going to waste. It's just using the good we have already. So we don't even have to think about the waste because I don't look at food as waste. It's just the recycling aspect that I look at. How can I recycle this without causing any other more damage, like Ikeila said, to the society or to the environment?
Sure.
And just doing our little part, because those little parts, we might not see it as an impact, but not throwing this out into the organic waste, to me, in another, for example, I spoke to you about the sustainable packaging, the plastic bag, and you're saying, no, Peter, you can't throw that away because that won't help anything. And I'm happy that I spoke to you that day, because now it's even giving me more incentive to say, okay, let me see how much more of these scraps can I break down and put into the plant. So thank you for that.
Oh, my pleasure. I really hope, Peter, that my kids listen to this interview, because they used to tease me endlessly for putting carrots and other kind of vegetables into the muffins. They always thought that was cheating somehow. But there we go. But yes, one of the things we talked about is that in the city of Toronto right now, compostable plastics, even though if they're labeled compostable, the city will not compost them. They're not allowed in the green bin because they don't break down fast enough in the city system. It's really frustrating for a lot of people. But Peter, what do you love about running a restaurant in this part of the city, in University-Rosedale?
Well, I love helping people to get healthy. And I love the feedback that we get when somebody would say to me, hey, you know what? I've been trying to have a healthy lifestyle, but I can't sustain it. So the educational aspect of it is what I really love. So we can explain why we steam our vegetables rather than cook it. Why is certain things done on a certain platform? So one of the main thing is educating people, and people giving me some form of education so I could incorporate that into my cooking style. I heard Ikeila said that she didn't have a mom that cooked. Well, I have the opposite. I have moms who could and dads who could cook, but they just weren't. They didn't even want me in the kitchen. Like, you know, like if I come around into the kitchen, it's like a boy. So it was like a stereotype thing, because you're a boy, or you shouldn't be learning to cook. Go do some schoolwork, you know. And really, over the period of time, what I'm doing with my kids now is showing them that, hey, here's a healthy lifestyle that can not only sustain you, but it can also give you independence. So when you have a family, or if you have friends, you can help them too. Like, so you're not only just keeping the love for yourself, you're sharing that, and that's one of the main thing I love with what I'm doing now with this vegan restaurant.
It's interesting how many traditions see giving food as a way of showing love. Certainly in my tradition, Jewish tradition, it's the same thing. When you're going to show love to somebody, you feed them.
Yes, good, healthy feeding, not just any feeding.
That's true.
Because you can feed them the wrong thing, and it's still love, you know. But love knowing that you can educate yourself in what nutrition and how to properly use that nutrition to feed your body, and then you could use that and tell people without feeling that they're doing any harm. You know, like you know for a fact that iron, like for example. I juice a lot of callaloo. I don't know if you heard about, like, it's almost like a spinach. We'll reduce the stock of it, and then we fortify that back into a drink. And for women who are low on iron, and I've noticed that because I speak to a lot of women who comes through, we give them a shot of these iron booster, we call it, is green iron. And they have come back and say, hey, Peter, thank you. You know, like, I don't know what it did, but I felt different. And
That's fantastic.
and those are the love. The love is when you can reciprocate it back, and somebody can come back with a great positiveness and say, yes, this helped, and so forth. So that love will never go away.
Ikeila, what about you? What do you love about running a restaurant in this community in University-Rosedale?
I love the people. We have the most amazing customers who have been, some of them have been with us through their undergraduate to graduate degrees because we're very close proximity to U of T. I've had people come to the restaurant who had their first dates, who are now married with children.
Wow.
Yeah, it's very interesting what can happen in over a decade, you know, and there are people who have followed us from the kiosk that we had at the Harbourfront Centre, people who have been following us from the days of, you know, being in the festival route, you know, and just interacting with people and also providing something that I feel a good conscience about. I feel a very great conscience about feeding food to everyone that I would feed to my children. And I feel very strongly about the ingredients that we use. I'm very determined to support farmers at any step possible because I absolutely love and adore farmers, just as almost as much as teachers. Yeah, yeah, just interacting with people, especially, you know, non-vegetarian people who come in and say, "Wow, this tastes better than I thought," and I'm like, "That's not a compliment," like, you know, or people who just want to get something to eat, who are maybe new to town and don't know where to get something that's vegan. Like, you know, the question that I'm asked a lot is, "What's vegan on the menu?" I say, "Everything." Everything. Yeah, everything. You can eat anything here. And so whether you're halal, whether you're kosher, you know, and I'm still working on the Buddhist because I love onion and garlic. Yeah, but anyone can eat here. Yeah, anyone can eat here. And I'm very proud of that. And I'm proud of the fact that, you know, we have a great mix of clientele who are, you know, ultra vegan to, you know, ultra meat eater. It doesn't matter. You know, it's just people who are consciously making choices to put something better on their plate.
What would you like people like me to know about the experience of being Black and running a green business? What would you like us to know? Ikeila?
What would I like you to know? That it's hard, man. It's rough. It's rough out there.
The particular experience of, I mean, everyone who runs a restaurant tells me it's hard, very hard. But
they're not lying. They're not lying.
I wasn't suggesting they were lying. I just wondered, is there something particular about the experience of being a Black owner of a green business that I should understand?
Well, how about a female Black owner of a business that's predominantly male?
Okay.
People don't expect the same level of quality. And there are subtle nuances of racism that we experience every day as a consumer, as a business person. So for that person that may just swerve and not come into the business because it's a Black business, that may be one person, that may be two people, but over time, cumulatively, it does have an economic effect. So you may have someone who opened at the same time as you, as a counterpart from another culture, who is doing a more lucrative business than you, not by means that they're better, but because there is subtle nuances of racism that are still in existence in our society, in our community. And that's just the reality.
Do you see that changing yet?
I'm sorry?
Do you see that changing yet?
Do I see it? Well, you know what? Over my lifetime, yes, some things change, and unfortunately, some things still remain the same. You know, I've had people walk in and say, "I want to speak to the owner." I am the owner. No, the real owner.
Yeah. Well, when I was running my practice, much the same thing. People expect, you know, the real lawyer to be a man.
Yeah. Do you own this place? Really?
That's true.
Mm-hmm.
And once they taste the food, do they get over it?
I don't know. I don't know what is in the heart of people. I just know that my conscience soars and is clear, and I deal with everyone on the same level. I don't care who you are or what your background is. You know, when people come in and tell me, "Oh, I'm not vegetarian," I say, "We don't discriminate." You know?
That's a good
Yeah,
line.
we don't discriminate. You know what I mean? Or my husband is vegetarian, I'm not. I say, oh, a mixed marriage. I see. You know? So it's important to keep things light so
Yeah.
that you don't get depressed or stressed about these situations. But we do have to deal with these things each and every single day. Trust me.
What about you, Peter? Was there, what would you like people who aren't Black to know about the specific challenges of being a Black business owner?
Well, the challenges, like, they have different tiers for that. Some of the challenge are, as we all know, financial, like loans or going to the bank and trying to get that first initial help without having any previous business expertise. But when it comes to the black and white issue, to me, it's, I've always said inside of us, we are humans first. As a human being, I don't look at the color of a person in the way how I should treat them. The palette has no color. You know, the only thing we want to do is make sure that you enjoy what I have to offer. And if you don't do that, then obviously we're not on the same page. So would I want you to be there if you're not enjoying what I'm producing? No. So at the same time, the color system in Canada is a little bit rigid because of where we're coming from and what we already know. The past is not just for colored people, it's for all people here. Before we could deal with the colored people, I think people should deal with the indigenous people that was already here doing their thing. So before you get to Peter or Ikeila saying, hey, you know, how could we help them? I think what the government should do is try to help the people, the First Nations first, and then use that as a platform to see how they can help us. Because without a platform, without some foundation, I don't see the justification that's when I go about helping, especially a black man. Like I've heard the term used a lot, like Black Lives Matters. I think we should be ashamed of ourselves to be thinking that color matters. Like especially with the education that we have blessed with right now, and see that when we're doing anything, I'm not thinking, oh yeah, this is a black type of food that I'm creating, or this is a white people type of food. Yeah, we could stereotype it because of the fact that we know certain culinary skills. But at the end of the day, people want good, tasting, healthy food. And that's why I stick to the food zone of my racialness, like of my platform of being not black, but just a chef that's putting good quality food for whatever palate, whether it be any color of the palate. And then from there, I could be judged. Hey, Pete, this doesn't taste right. Or Pete, this tastes good. Or Pete, you know, and so forth. But I think this race thing is just a screen put up so we can't see the real issue.
Well, that's interesting. I mean, one of the questions I do want to ask, though, is about climate policy. So as you folks know, that's why I'm in politics, is because I think if we get the climate crisis wrong, nothing else is going to matter. And I really am interested in, do you think climate policy would be different if there were more Black voices at the table? And if you think it would be different, how would it be different? What do you think?
Well, of course, you have to change the mentality of the people, right? Right now, we're in a zone where the climate change is not for poor people. It's only because poor people are getting involved into business why it becomes an issue. But the rich and the more government mindset, they already made money from the environment. Like when I was living in Jamaica, there was a bauxite problem that went on for years. And it's only when there was a certain set of people that went into bauxite, then all of a sudden there's a climate change or there's a climate movement So I think what we should do with climate is look at not only what it's doing to the to the people itself, but what is it doing to the food that we're all eating. If we could do the food science and saying, hey, biologically speaking, how is food changed over certain time and for what reason? And we can base it back to the erosion of the soil. There's so many other reasons why we should take this serious, because if the quality of food is going down, then obviously we're not going to be as nutritious as possible. And everybody know that nutrition has to do with how we think, our brain is fuel, and what we have inside of us to make certain great decisions. So if you really want to tackle climate change, tackle where your food is coming from. Like what is going into the food that you're eating, because you're still going to be eating it regardless of how vegetarian, vegan, meatitarian, doesn't matter. So if we can tackle those problems, then I think people will come to the table and realize that, whoa, okay, maybe we should do something.
Yeah, no, it's an interesting idea, thinking about the climate and environmental crises in terms of food. I know that drawdown.org, wonderful organization who's been looking at the most cost-effective climate solutions in the world. I think on their list, 8 of the top 20 were about food. And one of their very top ones is to reduce or possibly eliminate food waste. So you're on the right track.
Yeah.
That is one of the big ones for the world. What about you, Ikeila?
I'm trying to understand the question. You said if more Black people were at the table. Whose table?
Well, the table whatever your table is where decisions are being made.
Well, that connotates that we have no ownership of this table that we're being invited to. You understand? I think that it comes from a deeper education. Food security, as Peter said, is very important, but a lot of Indigenous people, farmers, don't understand the depth of the importance of food security and how it affects them besides just getting enough for your family to eat today. You know, as long as we have those type of people that have lack of knowledge because of lack of access to knowledge about what's going on environmentally in terms of pesticide use, in terms of, you know, the fertilizer that give you the big, fluffy, beautiful produce that is not necessarily good for the earth or good for human consumption in the long run. You know, I think that education is the basis so that when people of color or Indigenous people are brought to this table, they have an opportunity to maybe have some ownership of the table and have the authority to have some word that is valid and some say that is valid, you know, from their perspective. I mean, food culture, everyone eats, but what do you eat? Where did it come from? How did it get there? So just bringing people to the table by virtue of the color of their skin, I don't think that that will serve a useful purpose. I think educating and allowing the access to education about food security is very important, and it should start at the grassroots level. It should start in the primary schools. It should start with children in gardening programs. A lot of inner city children do not know that vegetables come from a farm. They do not know that the meat that they eat was an animal. They do not know that the eggs that they eat came out of a chicken. It's just, maybe I saw it in a book, but the relativity of it, of having their hands in the soil or going to see the animals or go to a farm and see what happens. A lot of these children don't know. So I think starting at the level of education so that when people reach to the level of secondary, post-secondary education, they have something to bring to this proverbial table.
Yeah, no, I really like the idea of kids gardening programs. That's an interesting.
I love that.
Yeah, that's a really good idea. And there's something, we could do that in University-Rosedale. I'm sure we could, if we thought about it hard enough. There must be enough places where we could make little gardens that local
Absolutely.
people.
Even mono gardens. The African Food Basket was doing a garlic project with so-called wasteland that were on subway lines and beside the subway stations, having young people planting garlic and then selling the garlic at farmers markets in the fall. I don't understand myself why there are not apple orchards on every school property, even one apple tree, even two pear trees, even berries, so the children can know what it is to grow something, feel the satisfaction and the delayed gratification of seeing something planted, grown, tended, reaped, and then sold for the benefit of the school.
Yeah, no, that's a really good idea. And it's interesting that both of you think about climate action in terms of food. I guess that makes sense in terms of the careers that you've picked. But you're right, everybody eats.
Everyone
And as you
eats.
said at the beginning, we're so lucky in Toronto that there's every different kind of food that it wasn't like that when I was little. I can assure you, Toronto, going to a Chinese restaurant was considered, for chop suey, was considered to be very exotic.
Well, things have changed.
Things have changed for sure. Well, thank you so much.
And we love that change. And this platform, sorry to cut you, Dianne, but this platform that, I don't want to really stereotype it, but for a white woman to be coming on a platform, bringing us, Ikeila and myself, to try to share into what we can do to make Rosedale or University a better place. I really do think, though, that the color thing it shouldn't be the forefront of what we're doing. Because although it's there, I think we should move away from just trying to say, what can I do for a Black business owner? You as a politician should be, what can I do for my constituency in a whole, in a wholesome wellness atmosphere? And then we'll see some changes. And hey, it's not a color thing, it's a wellness thing now that we're doing.
All right, I accept that. That's good for me. I appreciate that a lot. Thank you both so much for joining me today. This is great fun. We'll be airing this on the 23rd of February. I know we had to tape it today because we didn't want to bother you on a busy night. But thank you very much for making the time. Do let your friends and neighbors know. It'll be on our website, votefordianne.ca. And thank you for the ideas. And I love what we heard today. Thanks so much. And
Thank you so much, Dianne.
Great food.
Thank you, guys.
Bye-bye.
Have a beautiful day now.
Bless. One love.